Hello everyone to this video where we're going to be taking the RSV Atoll, the Atoll Class vessel, which is pretty small all things told, and we'll be adding the new SeaBean underwater crawler. Now if you haven't seen the SeaBean video, I recommend you take a look at that because that is a fun little build in itself. It has a lot of features, and the advantages over a mini sub is that you can just drive around on the seafloor. Now the Atoll is the perfect size ship for this because it's going to be just a one function vessel. However, I do love the current shape of the Atoll with kind of this rear deck and the walkway, but it's heavily optimized for fishing, as you can see with the little fish tank, the fish storage, and the fishing crane. So a lot of that will have to get adjusted. Of course, the rear deck and some other changes. The first thing we'll start with is just clearing this whole rear deck to make it kind of opened in the back. And you'll see what I mean in a second, but it's going to consist of a large open deck where we could store the SeaBean. Alright, deck cleaned out here. You can see that we've opened up a lot of space. There will be some adjustments we have to make, especially removing the water hose, adjusting the funnel stack, it's kind of in the way. The stairs I want to position in this direction, meaning the door is going to go here. And of course we'll remove the crane and kind of reconfigure the area. So the interior, you could see I've repositioned the door, and this kind of opens up this space for putting the staircase. Now I do have to do some rejigging, especially because this will in essence be like that, meaning this space might be open, but I may just have to keep it closed off because there's not really much I can do there, and these ladders have to continue on here up into the bridge. But first things first, I do want to start by clearing the crane and all the crane related microcontrollers, because we're going to have a much different crane for heavier loading than what we currently have here for the fishing. Alright, crane gone, party on. So now you could see the rear deck has a good amount of space, and again the stairs, yes, they will kind of go in this area, but that leaves a lot of this space. Now eventually I'm going to move the smokestack probably to around there, freeing up this area for a large overhead or gantry crane that I could place on the rear, and it could swing out and in. Now I do have to leave some space for the large or huge winch, so I'll see how that all plays out. I really do love these modern looking stairs, more so than putting railings, and of course then I could build in my 3 tall glass wall, versus if I were to use the railing it would have to be 4 tall, so it would have to be a little taller. And overall I think the rear deck is looking quite clean. I did rejig the electricity and fuel tank ports, and we'll see if I leave these buttons here for now. I just place them, kind of get them out of the way. So now I want to tackle this, which we have to clear out of the way, and this whole thing here has to get moved. So I will kind of just drag it out for now, and then see how I can reconfigure it to be working with the new port locations. Now the nice thing is all these kind of came from that direction anyways, and these ones we might have to just move. The fire hose was reconfigured, and it kind of just comes out of the wall there. Now we'll see if it works in the grand scheme of things, but depending on where the crane is, hopefully that just provides us with water in case there's a fire. I probably should also make it symmetrical with the ladders, just so you have 2 spots to climb up if you fall overboard or if you're in the water for whatever reason. And then, like I said, we'll get really onto these, but I didn't want to just blindly delete them without first understanding what their path is, because the biggest thing is keeping it in check what goes where, to prevent pretty much from messing up the path of these, because right now we have the exhaust coming out of there, but we have a bunch of intake ports and stuff. The whole thing's pretty much full of hose or pipes, so I just have to make sure that what I do move stays in line with the port that it is associated with. For certain critical things like this, I do recommend just hand doing it rather than trying to expedite it by kind of just copying things over, because again you'll end up in a big mistake if you don't really follow the exact location. See, even here, this one's a little confusing, but we probably just have to push it out to here. Now, assuming all these are just regular blocks as they were, then we could easily delete this, reconfigure that like that, put this, and then the last touch or last step is just grabbing this one, and to make it have less bends, which I kind of tend to do, we just make it go like that and pop up there, and that's pretty much it. Now the funnel can be placed back. I also closed off the funnel a little bit, made it a little more symmetrical for the shape of what we're trying to do here, and once I select it, the whole thing can be brought right into its spot, and I'm just hoping it fits without any issue over the slots. Now you could see that I did, oh, I guess it goes like that. Now I could lift it up one and take a look to make sure everything is aligned. We're actually not aligned. This one should be right here. That should put it to be aligned, and the functionality of the whole ship hasn't been diminished by this. Now we'll have to see what we put here. This is kind of a funky little zone, especially considering previously we just had a whole wall here, so that didn't really matter. Whereas now I do have to play a bit more into the aesthetic of things. And lastly, spawning it in, just because this was an actual functional change. Of course, the hose still has to work and operate, so that's one thing that I always like to test first. Then the door shouldn't clash with anything. We could have even moved it one more, possibly, but I don't really want to squish this area too much. Like, it already is a little tight, so I don't want to be coming in hitting a wall directly. But it does give us a pretty big sized deck. Of course, I can grab this back end and extend it, and I'm going to save a version of this vessel for that reason. Now the stairs themselves seem to work nicely. Everything else is in functional order. I don't like this door. I wish this was a sliding door, so we'll see. But with the ignition and the smokestack and the air intake, just make sure it still drives and works, which clearly it does. There are many advantages to a sliding door, primarily the fact that it doesn't swing out and kind of block your way, but keep in mind if we place it here, we have to move everything or delete everything here. So that restricts us because we have to be able to climb up into the bridge from this lower compartment. Now, yes, some ships would just seal off this area, and the only way to access the bridge is by going from the stairs on the outside, and that's pretty modern and or realistic in most ships nowadays. I wouldn't say it's modern, it's just a way of life. But I do like having easy accessibility to and from those areas. Now, if I do rotate the door in the other direction, I do think it'll swing and hit into this. Never mind, that works much better. I may even have to do this on the Atoll, because like this, we can walk in, and yeah, it's a little very cramped in this location, but it is a small vessel, so you're kind of stuck with it being it is what it is, but now at least it doesn't block you and you have to push yourself around the corner. Now this is also just a fact of life on this class vessel. There's too little of a space here, so the only way to pass is by crouching under the window. But again, you could always make your way up through the front, where again you have to crouch around this. So just with such a compact build, there are some restrictions, and we find a way to live with them, of course. Otherwise, I just make the ship bigger, which is an idea as well, but not for this specific vessel. On a side note, on the Atoll itself, I put the door in the same configuration just so it blocks that, which is less important to us than blocking our main kind of route up the stairs and through the door here. With the deck being cleared for its purpose pretty much, now I do have to bring in the SeaBean and see is there enough space for it, which you can see there is. But now our downside, or the other thing, is we also need that large winch. Otherwise there's no way to deploy it and no way to extend the cable, all that stuff. It depends on the cable, that's its lifeline. So now I have to see about that. This size winch is pretty problematic for a ship this size. As you can see, I can't even, like, this is centered, but then it kind of blocks the door and all this stuff. If I elevate it up, then this control cabin won't see what the crane's doing. It'll be blocking my view if I make it here. And of course this size deck isn't big enough for the SeaBean. Seems the only way I can logically make this work is by expanding the ship. It looks like to be maybe 6 blocks or so, 5 blocks. Put the winch right here, kind of built into the deck too, so it doesn't necessarily take up more space than it has to height-wise. And then it kind of just jams itself right in between the stairs here and that door. And it gives us enough deck space to place the SeaBean on the back there. Of course, we'll need a gantry crane to lower it, but right now, from the crane seat, you have a nice vantage point of what you're working on, so I think this should work. So the exterior seems to be sealed, now I just have to close off the gas tank here, and what I've done is increase the length of this stabilization bar. Now you could see that it kind of floats in this portion, but that's okay. What I can easily do, and will do actually, is put some regular weight. Now yes, it's not as effective, but it will still happily do the trick. And once this area is sealed off like this and the ballast tanks are sealed off, now the last thing is just the piping. Now yes, the cleanest thing would be to, you know, actually not have these things orientated like this. So I might just go ahead and plug them in properly. This opens up a decent amount of space here in the engine room itself, but one thing that I think is wise to do is put a bit more battery power, because end of the day the batteries are what's keeping this thing moving. So if you start to run low on batteries on the ship, your little SeaBean will also start to flounder. So we're better off putting some spare batteries. With the deck kind of restored, the batteries added, it seems to be well underway of being completed. Now I do have to migrate over these systems, and what I will do is place them here inside the office space. It is a small lab, but we obviously have to have some of the controls, at least the display for the winch. We don't have to have as big controls, but if you are playing with 2 people, the person up top will want to see what's going on in the SeaBean. One thing that's pretty obvious is the connectors. The H4 system will clash with this door, which we can't have. So what I might do to alleviate that issue is put the door in this location, just being careful that down here inside what we deem as kind of our ballast tank is that it's closed off so it doesn't leak. Now in here this is fine, so that will work. Now on this side, do we have microcontrollers or pipes passing through? No, we don't. So in this case, same deal. We'll just place those down there, take this hatch, rotate it into place, and there we go. This will allow the H4 connectors to exist right beneath the vehicle. Have to move the whole thing up though to allow them. I've hit all the microcontrollers in the hull here down there, and the last thing needed now is to actually put the electronics. Now I did even make the manual winch controls right there, so you could bring the winch up and down as needed. And other than the interior, the last step is to see if this thing's too heavy for this hull, which will be kind of a moment of truth situation. This is where we come across a huge problem. Well, the 1,000 weight SeaBean pretty much makes the Atoll want to sink. Now, of course, if you hop into the pilot's seat, once you drive off, you'll find that the actual vehicle or vessel will right itself very quickly. But that still is a problem for us because, as you know, if you have to wait for yourself to actually drive off for your vehicle or vessel to gain stability, as you see here, that's no good. And look at that, even now it's so front heavy. So I'm almost thinking one possibility could be to add weights that will regulate the vessel in the forward and back direction and allow us to use this. Otherwise, this platform would have to be extended out. Interesting enough, without the winch, you can see that it actually does work pretty good. Now, one thing that I remember hearing, and actually Sheppy showed me in this lovely vessel, the Krabby Sheppy. Now here, it uses a small winch attached to a pulley system, and that pulley system actually gives us an incredible amount of length. So we might be able to get away with using a small winch and the pulley, and that may give us all the length we need. Because we know this huge winch in itself is 400 mass, plus the vehicle itself is about 1,000. So when you get those two values, you do end up with a substantial amount of weight all in the back of this already pretty small vessel. So what happens if I just purely delete the winch? So that test, while definitely better, we're still weighing the back down heavily. So I just replaced all the systems into this little winch here, and this one is now good to be deleted. Now with that actually being removed, we can actually move the SeaBean over and move its connectors over and see if positioning it closer to the front of the ship will give us that extra bit of balance we need. Now, of course, as you're loading the thing into the water, your ship may heavily start to list. I mean, as you drive off and as you pick it up, so we'll have to see how that all works. But hopefully the overall system will be okay. Okay, so putting it there in the center does give us the balance that we need, which seems okay. We could even have it a little bit more towards the rear even, and it'll still stay okay. This balancing seems to be working properly. The overall idea works. You know, we're still riding a little low in the water here, but once we take this thing off, I mean, I think it should be okay. The water may lap into the deck, into that area there, so you have to be careful, keep it closed. Overall, the vehicle or vessel should function properly, considering, you know, we're carrying a tank, pretty much a small tank on the back of this vessel. And you see as we brake here, the water will kind of flood the deck, so it would enter that cabin space there, but it seems to be working okay. Now in here, we could turn this on. It tells us, you know, I have to rename that, but overall that is the display attached to the winch itself, meaning if we hop into this, we should be able to press this button once the thing is on, and this will start to increase. Now the actual speed itself should be changed. The small winch is a lot slower than a large one, so it will do that. But if we decide to drive off the deck now, once I disconnect this thing from the ship, which I forgot to do, so open the door. Right here is the little disconnect, and off we go. Now the door was open for a second there, but let's see what happens. So the ship itself seems to function and doesn't really sink. Yes, it heavily lists forward, which could deem it unstable in certain aspects, so we could turn the weather up, but the actual controls are going further and further, so that seems good. Even with 50% wind, the Atoll seems to be sitting pretty nicely, albeit front heavy, but that is okay. And our little SeaBean beneath here is working. The winch keeps bringing us further and further, so overall it seems that we got it. Actually driving the vessel in worse weather conditions seems to be okay. Even as we throttle up all the way, we're still making pretty good speed, and it remains decently stable, so I'd say this works quite nicely. Now the overall balancing and weighting of the whole thing, like I said, I wish this door wouldn't permit water in, so I may try to do something a little bit more there. And actually that new system with the pulleys actually opens up a whole new door where things like this could actually be replaced with smaller winches, make the ship lighter, easier to maneuver, whatever. We don't really need the large winch if we're using that pulley system. But back to the Atoll situation, we're going to color the back crane the same colors, and we're going to extract the microcontroller from here, no need to remake it, and reuse this guy in the other ship. To make standardized controls, I've extracted the rat gantry crane, and you could see here that it seems to be working quite nicely. So this is what we're going to put on the vessel. Now, as you can see, it already has a down camera, back camera, and left and right winch feed cameras, as well as winch up, down, and winch attachments. So this actually lets you utilize a multiple different systems and give you kind of the benefit of being able to place both the towfish creations or winch attachments or mini subs or whatever you want to this. So nice little winch system and very versatile. So while I do like my little crane here, it is probably not strong enough even to pick this up, so I'm going to get rid of it. But when I do make a couple more different rat crane variations, this style will definitely be what I make, because this is a smaller and easier to use system. So I do have to configure this crane to this vessel. Right now the sizing may not be what we need, and we're going to find that out pretty soon here. Interesting, it seems the spacing of the tracks is exactly what we need, but now the ladders will not be. So I even could remove the ladders and just make the system simply like this. And once I put this into the vessel, then it's just a matter of configuring those controls into the control room, and we should be pretty much plug and play. A drawback of this vessel is this seat, and this crane control area is very small. We do have some area up here for a display on the side and on the bottom. Keep in mind that right now this gantry crane is configured only for buttons, but some of these systems, especially these buttons up, down, away, right, and lean, could all be configured to be operated by the seat itself rather than from buttons that both take up space and also are, you know, difficult to reach potentially. So a little bit of late R&D here. What I do have is the crane controller that I removed previously. I had a lever, so that gives us a perfect spot here for a seat. Now with the seat, I definitely want to make sure that, if anything, like always, my microcontrollers are functional for multiple things. So it'll be buttons or seat configuration. And here I can actually take my seat node once I find it and place it where I can have the seat controls or the button controls operating the crane. Now my gantry system is pretty outdated, and as you know, I went through and redid all of my rat cranes, and now that I've redid that, I do want to make them all standardized, match, and look nice. So there I have it. I reconfigured the microcontroller to operate it from the seat. So now you have a choice to control it from there or from there. Of course, the camera feeds and winches and stuff are still on working systems, but I wanted to make, or on instrument panel systems, but at least the movement of the crane is going to be from the seat itself. So there we have it. The new crane microcontrollers fit perfectly right here. The crane itself seems to be in place. I did also place a connector that will prevent it from sliding and moving when the ship is sort of underway. And finally, what I'm going to do is test it out now. Hopefully the test is successful and that concludes this creation for the most part. Spawned in the game, it actually looks beautiful. I really like the shape and size of it. The smokestack's good. Now, of course, the smokestack will get in the way of moving this gantry crane too much, which we'll have to see if that ends up impeding this design. If so, without that large winch here, this smokestack could actually move even more back to fill this spot here. In this case, this door gets in the way, but I think we might be lucky enough to be able to move the opening side of the door over there. And then in that case, we pretty much open up a big portion of space to potentially move these pipes and stuff. Battle case of deja vu, but it seems everything is aligned here. So if we place the smokestack right there, that will actually allow not only the crane to move more, because I could also just give it more of a movement zone, but in addition to that, it'll just function better because we can also tilt the crane down and make it kind of pick up any cargo wherever it may be on the deck. So that will help us for sure. As you can see, the crane system is operational. We can move it in many configurations, so that is really good. Now's the moment of truth as I drive this off the vessel. So you saw that it kind of worked, and then we can winch out and it should start to drop down fairly quick. So that is in essence a working system. Now bringing it back aboard, that's going to be something else. So I presume we'll want to do something like this, where you tilt out that gantry crane, and then when it's that way, then we got to start lifting up the winch here on the deck. And I actually forgot I did not put controls here for the winch. Right now the controls only exist in this control station, so in this case we can actually lift it up from here. Now that's not ideal. I definitely don't want to be using that for lifting, so I will have to update that and put a parallel controller system in that other portion of the ship. Also, you can see that the pulley system is kind of pushing the crane out, or pushing the crane towards the far side, so we may have to enable the locking system that will actually lock the crane in place there too. So I went ahead and placed some of those nice refinements that I just talked about. So in essence now, from the bridge of the ship, what you can do is pop in to this seat and operate the pulley with 1 and 2 hotkeys, so that will allow you to bring it up. Also, when you turn this crane on, it automatically unlocks to be able to be moved. But if you press this, it will lock it in the end and you won't be able to move it. So that will actually help us, hopefully, be able to retrieve this thing. So now the little tank is on the bottom, the SeaBean, and I could now, or should now, be able to press 2, and it should start to reel in that system. Now, of course, what we will have to also do is tilt this whole thing out, like that, and also lift it up as tall as possible, because it's a heavy little thing, and I'm pretty sure by the time we get up here we need all the space to clear the end of the ship, as you can see. So the moment of truth, now we're pulling it up, the whole system's kind of bending. Alright, can we now bring it in? Alright. Yes, perfect. And now, yes, the back of the ship will do that. That's quite normal. You can keep pulling it up, and hopefully it will align itself and position the little SeaBean onto the deck itself, where we can either push it or position it back into place. And actually right now is a good time to unlock that, and then we can actually track it down the deck like that and into its home. I'll turn that off, and hopefully now once it gets into position, it'll lock right into place. You can store it forward or backward. So there you have it. That actually worked probably better than I expected. So we were able to utilize our crane to bring the SeaBean back onto the ship. Now the system currently has a lot of tension, so yes, you will need to release the pulley as I'm doing now, and hopefully that lets you bring it back into its spot. And when you turn this off, the whole system should lock into place here in the end, and hopefully be pretty stable and not troublesome for you. But from what I'm seeing, it seems to actually work pretty nicely. Another nice thing is the battery inside that when the ship is in generator mode, as we are now, it actually is releasing or keeping this thing charged up pretty good. So that's interesting. We're keeping 10 RPS and the battery's up and running. This is really a vessel that I like, and it came together quite nicely. To be honest, at one point I thought there's no chance and I'll just have to give up on this entire video, but as you can see, with a little bit of effort, some luck, and kind of trying and trying and trying, you will end up in a place where you could make something that is exactly what you want. So I do hope you all enjoyed this video. This vehicle will be released to the server boosters and to my YouTube members first, and then it will be going to the general public in a bit, but I do like to let them kind of test it and utilize it, and we'll see if there are any bugs or things to fix before it hits kind of the general public. But thank you all for watching. Love the support, it really means a lot to me, and we're gonna see you next time. Happy Stormworksing, everyone.